The night air was cool and quiet, carrying that kind of stillness that makes every sound seem louder than it is. Ana de Armas had been walking for a while, her steps uneven, her mind somewhere far away from the streets she was on. She had left an event early, smiling for the cameras one last time before slipping out through a side door. No one noticed. No one followed. The lights behind her faded until the only glow came from the scattered street lamps. She didn't realize she had turned down the wrong street until she saw buildings she didn't recognize. The sidewalks looked emptier here, the light colder. She stopped at a corner, glanced around, and then kept walking as if she knew where she was going. But she didn't. She could feel the tight pull in her chest, that quiet panic that comes when you know you are lost, but you don't want anyone to see it. Behind her, there was the soft sound of footsteps. Not rushed, not heavy, just steady. She thought for a moment it might be another passerby, but when she turned slightly, she saw him. Keanu Reeves. No camera, no crowd, just him in a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, walking at the same quiet pace she was. "You okay?" His voice was low, gentle, not the kind of question you answer with a fake smile. She paused, unsure if she wanted to admit it, but something about his eyes made her stop pretending. "I think I went the wrong way," she said, the words barely above a whisper. He didn't ask where she had been or why she left. He just stepped closer, not invading her space but making sure she knew he was near. "Then let's find the right way," he said. Simple, not dramatic. Like it was the most normal thing in the world to walk with someone until they were safe. They started moving again, side by side. She noticed how he kept just half a step behind her, letting her lead but still making it clear he wasn't going anywhere. They passed closed shops, dim cafes, and empty bus stops. Every so often, he glanced at her as if checking not just that she was safe, but that she was breathing easier. After a few blocks, they came to an intersection where she hesitated. She thought she recognized the street name, but wasn't sure. The wind picked up slightly, brushing strands of her hair across her face. Before she could pull them away, he gently reached and moved them back, not saying anything, just making sure she could see. "You've been walking a long time," he said quietly. "I didn't want to call a car," she admitted. "I just needed space." He nodded. He understood that without needing details. Sometimes space is easier when you're not alone. Those words stayed with her longer than the walk itself. They kept going, her steps steadier now, the streets starting to look more familiar. She realized he wasn't just guiding her physically, he was keeping her anchored without making her feel weak, and for some reason, that meant more than she could say. In the distance, she saw the warm glow of a street she recognized. Her building was a few minutes from there. She slowed a little, not because she didn't want to get home, but because she felt something shift. In a city full of noise, fame, and faces that turn away too fast, someone had chosen to stay beside her until the end of the road. She glanced at him, and for the first time that night, her smile wasn't for the cameras. It was real, and he smiled back, like he had been waiting for that moment the whole way. The streetlight above them flickered once before holding steady, casting a soft yellow glow across the pavement. Ana slowed her steps, not ready for the walk to be over. Her building was just a couple of blocks away now, but there was something in the quiet presence beside her that she didn't want to lose just yet. Keanu noticed. He didn't say anything, but he adjusted his pace, matching her slower rhythm. The night air was crisp, and the only sound was the soft shuffle of their shoes. After a while, Ana spoke, her voice low. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," he replied simply, "but sometimes the things we don't have to do are the ones that matter the most." She let his words sink in. For a moment, she thought about all the times people had been around her when cameras were flashing, when smiles were easy, but how quickly they disappeared when the lights went off. Tonight felt different, As they passed a small bakery, she caught the faint smell of bread still warm from the oven. It made her realize she hadn't eaten since the event. Keanu must have noticed the way she lingered by the window because he stopped and looked at her. "Want to go in?" She hesitated. It was late, and she didn't want to seem like she was keeping him longer. But before she could answer, he opened the door for her. The bell above it rang softly. Inside, the light was warmer, almost golden, and the air was thick with the scent of sugar and butter. The woman behind the counter smiled, clearly recognizing them both, but she didn't gasp or ask for a photo. She just nodded politely. Anna ordered a small roll, and Keanu got one too. They sat at a corner table by the window, the quiet hum of the fridge filling the space. She tore off a piece of bread and let it warm her fingers. "It's strange," she said, almost to herself, "how you can be surrounded by people and still feel lost." Keanu didn't rush to respond. He took a bite, chewed slowly, and then said, "Being seen isn't the same as being known." She looked at him then, really looked. His eyes were calm, steady, but there was a depth there, like he understood what it was to feel invisible even when the world was watching. They didn't speak much after that. They didn't need to. The silence wasn't heavy. It was the kind that made the world feel safe for a little while. When they finished, he insisted on paying, and she didn't argue. Stepping back into the night, the streets felt softer somehow. Maybe it was the bread, maybe it was the company. But for the first time that evening, she felt a little less like she was wandering and a little more like she was on her way. As they reached the turn for her street, she glanced at him and said, "You could have just pointed me in the right direction earlier." "I could have," he agreed, smiling faintly, "but then I wouldn't have walked beside you." She didn't know how to answer that, so she just kept walking, her steps lighter than before. The street leading to Anna's apartment was quieter than the rest. The buildings stood taller here, their windows mostly dark, and the air seemed still, almost holding its breath. Anna slowed again as they approached the entrance to her building. The soft glow from the lobby spilled out through the glass doors, and for the first time that night, she felt the strange mix of relief and disappointment that comes when something good is about to end. Keanu stopped a few steps from the door, not rushing her. "You're home," he said gently, like it was both a fact and a promise. She nodded but didn't move forward yet. "Thank you for walking with me," she said. "You didn't have to spend your night this way." He tilted his head slightly, his eyes catching the light. "Maybe I did," he said, and the way he said it made it feel less like a duty and more like a choice he had wanted to make from the start. Before she could reply, the doorman appeared, nodding respectfully. "Good evening, Miss de Armas," he said, then glanced at Keanu with the kind of quiet recognition that didn't need words. Anna stepped toward the door but then stopped. "Would you come in for a minute?" she asked. She didn't know exactly why she said it. Maybe because she didn't want the night to fade too quickly. Maybe because she felt she owed him more than a thank you. He hesitated, his gaze drifting toward the quiet street behind them. "Only if you really want me to," he said. She smiled faintly. "I do." Inside, the lobby was warm, the faint scent of polished wood and fresh flowers in the air. The elevator ride was silent but not awkward. When they reached her floor, she led him into her apartment, a cozy space with soft lighting and a few candles still burning on the coffee table. Keanu took a slow look around, not in the way of someone judging, but as if he was letting the room tell him a story. "You've made it feel like home," he said. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh. "Sometimes I still feel like I'm just passing through." He glanced at her, his eyes thoughtful. Home isn't about time. It's about feeling. She poured them both tea, the steam curling upward between them. They sat on the couch, the city lights spilling through the window. She told him a little about the event she had left, how the questions and flashing cameras had felt heavier than usual, how she had smiled until it hurt. "It's strange," she said softly, "how easy it is to look fine when you're not." He nodded slowly. People forget that strong doesn't mean unbreakable. There was a pause then, the kind where neither wanted to fill the air too quickly. She realized in that moment that the walk wasn't just about getting her home. It was about giving her space to be honest without having to explain everything. When he finally stood to leave, she walked him to the door. "You should know," she said quietly. "You made tonight a little less lonely." He gave her a small, warm smile. "That's all I wanted." And with that, he stepped into the hallway, the sound of his footsteps fading slowly, like the night itself was reluctant to let go. The next morning, sunlight spilled across Anna's living room floor, turning the wooden boards into strips of gold. She stood by the window with her tea, looking down at the quiet street below. The memory of the night before lingered, not in sharp images, but in the soft feeling it left behind. A calm she hadn't felt in weeks. She told herself it had just been a walk, just a kind gesture. Yet something about the way Keanu had stayed beside her kept circling in her mind. She had met plenty of kind people before, but most kindness came quickly and left just as fast. This felt different. Her phone buzzed. It was a short message from him. "Hope you slept well. If you're going out later, I know a better bakery than the one last night." She smiled without meaning to. Typing back felt easy. "You're assuming I want bread again." His reply came almost instantly. "Everyone wants bread again." A few hours later, she found herself walking toward a quiet street on the other side of the city. It was lined with old buildings, ivy crawling up the walls, and tucked between two bookshops was the bakery he'd mentioned. Its door was painted a faded blue, and the smell inside was even better than she'd imagined. Fresh bread, cinnamon, and something buttery she couldn't quite name. He was already there, sitting at a table near the back, a small paper bag beside him. "You're early," he said, looking up with that quiet smile of his. "I didn't want to get lost again," she teased, sliding into the seat opposite him. "I would have walked you here," he said, and it didn't sound like a joke. They ordered coffee and pastries, and as they ate, the conversation drifted easily between them. She told him about her first months in the city, how overwhelming it had been, the mistakes she'd made trying to fit in. He listened without interrupting, but when she paused, he said, "Fitting in is overrated. Belonging is better." Those words stayed with her. Belonging. She wondered when she had last truly felt it. After they finished, they stepped outside, the day bright but not harsh. Keanu suggested a walk through the park nearby, and she agreed. The path wound between tall trees, their leaves whispering in the breeze. Children played on the grass, and somewhere in the distance, a guitarist strummed a slow tune. As they walked, she noticed how he never tried to fill every silence. He didn't rush her words or try to turn the moment into something bigger than it was. He simply stayed, as if that in itself was enough. Near the end of the path, they stopped by a small pond. The water was still, reflecting the blue of the sky. She looked at him and said, "You make it hard to feel lost when you're around." He met her eyes, steady and warm. "That's the point." It was a simple exchange, but something in it shifted the air between them. Not romance, not yet, just a deeper thread of trust forming quietly, like a road neither of them planned, but both wanted to follow. As they left the park, the day felt lighter, as if the city itself had softened for a while. The days that followed fell into an unspoken rhythm. They didn't plan to see each other every day, but somehow it happened anyway. Sometimes it was a walk after work, sometimes coffee in a corner cafe, sometimes just sitting on a bench in the park without saying much. Each time, the world outside seemed to slow down, like it respected the space they were building between them. One evening, the sky was heavy with clouds and the streets shimmered with the light of a fresh rain. Anna stood under the awning of a small bookstore waiting for Keanu. She could hear the soft patter of water dripping from the roof, the air smelling of wet pavement and old paper from the shop behind her. When he appeared, his jacket damp at the shoulders, he didn't greet her with a rush of words, just a nod and that quiet, grounding presence she had come to expect. "You're late," she teased softly. "I took the long way," he said. "Wanted to make sure the street was safe." She rolled her eyes, but there was warmth in it. "You don't have to keep looking out for me, you know." He looked at her, calm but certain. "I know. That's why I do it." They stepped inside the bookstore. The air was warm, filled with the scent of ink and binding glue. Rows of shelves stretched out before them, and the faint sound of a piano track played from a speaker in the corner. Anna drifted toward the travel section, running her fingers lightly over the spines. He found her there, holding a book about old European towns. "Planning an escape?" he asked. "Maybe," she said. "Sometimes I think about disappearing somewhere no one knows me, starting over." He studied her for a moment before replying. "You can start over without running away. Sometimes you just need the right people around you." She met his eyes then, realizing the weight of his words. They bought the book, he insisted on paying, and stepped back into the damp night. The streets glistened under the street lamps, and their reflections followed them in the puddles as they walked. The conversation shifted to lighter things, films they loved, music they'd been listening to, stories about places they'd been. When they reached the corner near her building, she stopped. "You know," she said, "before that night, I thought I was doing fine, and maybe I was. But walking with you made me realize how much I was just trying to survive the days." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, "Sometimes we don't know we're lost until someone walks beside us." She felt her throat tighten, but she didn't look away. The rain had stopped, but a drop from the awning above them landed on her shoulder. He reached out without thinking, brushing it away. The air between them was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of all the things they weren't saying yet. The morning after the rain, the city was washed clean. Sunlight poured over the streets, making the puddles sparkle. Anna sat at her kitchen table, staring at the travel book Keanu had bought her. She traced her finger over a page with a photograph of a small stone bridge in France, but her mind wasn't really on the picture. It was on the man who had walked beside her night after night, never asking for anything, never trying to take more space than she gave. Her phone buzzed. A simple message from him. "Free for a walk?" She smiled. Always. They met in the late afternoon, near the park where they had once stood by the pond. This time the trees were lit with the soft gold of the setting sun, and the air carried the warmth of the day. They walked without a destination, letting their steps choose the path. As they turned a corner, Anna noticed a narrow street lined with old brick houses, their windows overflowing with flowers. She slowed down, drawn to it. "I've never been down here," she said. "Let's go," Keanu replied. The street was quiet, almost hidden from the rest of the city. The sound of their footsteps on the cobblestones felt louder in the stillness. Halfway down, there was a small bench under a tree heavy with blossoms. They sat, and for a long time they didn't speak. Anna broke the silence first. "You've been walking with me for days now, but you've never asked me why I left that event early, why I was so far from home that night." Keanu looked out at the flowers swaying in the breeze. "If you wanted me to know, you'd tell me. I don't need the reason to be here." Her throat tightened at that. "I left because I felt like I didn't belong there. Like I was surrounded by people who only saw me for the parts they liked, not for all of me. It gets tiring." He finally turned to face her, his expression calm but full of understanding. Belonging isn't about being liked. It's about being accepted, even when you're quiet, even when you're not shining. The words hit something deep inside her. She looked at him, realizing that in all the time they'd walked together, she had never felt the need to pretend. "And what about you?" she asked softly. "Why do you keep showing up?" He gave a small smile. "Because sometimes, when you've been lost yourself, you recognize it in someone else, and you don't walk away." Her eyes warmed, the world around them blurring for a moment. They sat there until the light began to fade, the street lights flickering on one by one. When they finally stood, she didn't feel the pull of uncertainty she had felt that first night. She knew the way home, but she also knew she didn't have to walk it alone anymore. As they reached her building, she stopped at the door and looked at him. "You walked beside me until I found my way back. I won't forget that." He shook his head gently. "It wasn't about finding your way back. It was about reminding you that you were never really alone." And for the first time in a long time, Anna believed it.